And the thing that I fear the most is losing my husband. And it was hard for me to write about it. I actually started the series with Benny's husband alive. I was going to write a married couple, because marriage, they say you write what you know, and the only thing I know is being married, so I thought, okay, I'll write about a married couple. And I couldn't pull it off. There was something missing. And it finally occurred to me, you know what, you need to write about something that really scares you. What are you really scared of? And it is losing my husband. And when I wrote Fool's Puzzle, I lost 25 pounds because it so emotionally drained me. My husband was very worried for me when I was writing. He thought, you know, if you do this with every book, this is not going to be a healthy thing, you know. But I think it was the strain of writing the first book plus of what I was writing about. And then I ended up, you know, having Gabe come into her life. And I am indeed writing about marriage, which is what I intended to do, but I just had to write about that one thing.
Well, and it's nice, too, that the fact that it was heartfelt, I think, is reflected in the fact that even in Seven Sisters, which is several books along from Fool's Puzzle, Benny still takes time to think about Jack. You know, she still misses him, even though she's remarried, even though, you know, her life is moving along and she's happy. She has not forgotten.
Well, was married to him for 15 years, and he was her childhood sweetheart, and I don't think that you would. My husband would forget someone that easily. My husband and I talk about that, about we're very open. Being together since you were 15, you develop an interesting friendship that goes into your marriage. I was telling somebody recently that I have this theory that in marriage that the way you see your spouse is the age that you met them at. And since we met at 15, when we're alone, we don't have children, we've never had children, we tend to be very juvenile when we're with each other. And I think that you have certain memories and stuff, and even if something happened to him now or something happened to me and neither one of us got married again, that first relationship, it would always color your life. You would always think about that person, and everything you would do would, you know, you just don't forget about people that quickly. And sometimes in fiction, I find that unrealistic when people...
Well, exactly. And sometimes the kinds of things you write about are really a literary or a plot device. And I think the fact that it still resonates in your books means that you did write it from the heart, you know, that it wasn't tossed into Fool's Puzzle just as a device, but it was really part of your own worldview. And, you know, that validates, I think, you know, all the books that don't... You don't come upon one now and think, she didn't really mean it, you know, it wasn't sincere, it was just a gimmick, all those sorts of things. And there are authors who recently have rather casually killed off, you know, love relationships or other sorts of things in their books in an effort to keep them going. And I think it's a mistake. I think it to some degree makes a parody out of, or parodies the early things that happened in the series.
I started out with the death, so I had nowhere to go but up from there. And again, when I wrote that book, and I try to do this with every book, I write every book as if it's the last book I'm going to write. I don't know where I got that idea to do that. It's just that I want to always leave my reader with a satisfying feeling. You don't know if every book that you write might be your last book. I don't believe in holding back and saying, okay, this is a really good thing, so I'm going to save it for another book. I just try to do my best with that book that I'm writing, assuming it may be my last book, and then when there's another one, then I'm just happy. Oh, great, I get to write another one. It's always exciting when I just started book number 9, and I'm on tour now, but I left and I had a chapter and a half written, and I'm just like, I want to get back to it. I'm really excited about book number 9. I get excited about every book I start.
Well, I think one can tell that, but the good news is for your readers, if you're smushed by a bus, at least they've had 8 books.
Yes, that's right.
You know,
and they can.
And we know where everybody is, so to speak.
Right.
At the end, we're not doing that. You know, Perils of Pauline. Read the next book for the hook. And I think that is important. I really do think that in part of your sort of compact of playing fair with the reader is that you can continue the characters' lives, but the story, you know, needs to be complete book to book. And if possible, I suppose it is good to give your characters kind of a resting place, so that if that's the end of their lives, because let's face it, if you are smushed by a bus, they're all going to die with you.
It. You know, you only have a chapter and a half of number 9, so, you know, unless I can get somebody to finish it. But, yeah, I think that's important because I'm a reader. I try to write books. There's like 2 ways you look at it as a writer and the things you want to do as a writer, but also remember that you're a reader. And you say to yourself, or at least I do when I write, what would I want as a reader? What makes me happy as a reader? Now, obviously, what makes me happy as a reader is not going to make everybody happy. And this idea that you can please everyone all the time is ridiculous. You can't. So you just have to say, what would please me as a reader? What do I think would please my audience? Because I have a good feel for who my audience is. And there are certain things I just would not do in these books, which is why I would like at some point to write a mainstream book, or if somebody wanted to read something of mine that was vastly different. I have a story in the anthology Murder on Route 66, and it is not a Benny story. It's very literary, much more violent than what I usually write, but in a very moralistic in the way that I write, a lot of metaphor and stuff in it. And I would like to explore different things, but there are certain things I can't do because I owe something to the group of people that read my books.
Well, you've already made some choices for this series, and so, you know, you have to abide by them. I liked your story in Route 6. That was the book that Carolyn Wheat edited.
Right, right. That was
and
fun.
I think the hook in that one was the highway, wasn't it?
Right. We had to write someplace on Route 66. And I'm not really good at mystery short stories. When she asked me to do this, I've been asked quite a few times to write for anthologies. And it's just because I wrote literary short stories, which are entirely different than mystery short stories. With mystery short stories, you sort of have to have some hook. They have to be very plot-oriented with a really good hook. And the people who do it well do it so well. And I told her, I'm not sure I can do this, but I was so intrigued by the Route 66 theme that I went out and drove on some of Route 66 to get some inspiration, and I came up with this idea for a story, which, you know, might shock some of my readers because it is different. But that was more like what the literary short stories that I wrote. They were very serious short stories.
Well, I don't think you shock your readers. I think if readers like your voice, you know, they're gonna read it. I hope you are gonna write a mainstream novel, and I think actually survival in today's literary marketplace virtually dictates that you think about doing other things. And I also think, although you've overcome the problem for reasons we can discuss, that you know, series more or less have finite lives. I mean, there's an arc in a series most of the time, and unfortunately some writers don't even recognize when they've come to the end of it. But you have a great way, now that we've said that, of, I think, going about dealing with this. You started with Fool's Puzzle. You have what is in effect a main character, Jack, who's dead and off stage. You've got Benny, who's grieving and who gets involved in something else, and you bring in some characters for her to interact with and thus drive your plot. And each book, as you've gone along, you have held on to the family, the characters that you've created, but you've also brought in new characters. And it seems to me that your genius is that you keep assembling this huge cast, but it doesn't become burdensome or weighty because you move them around. You highlight different ones in different books so that we don't actually have to keep up with everybody book to book. Is that something that comes naturally to you?
Well, because I come from a big Southern family, probably so. You know, when you get together with a big Southern family, the whole, you know, you spend hours and hours and hours having to catch up on everything that everybody's done, and somehow you keep it all straight. I read a lot of Southern fiction. Southern fiction is my love, and so I think that that's influenced a lot the way I write.
The super family kind of thing?
Right, the huge Pat Conroy convoluted family sagas. I just love books like that. And I love big families and all the things and all the stories, you know, so I think I've incorporated that into my writing. But I've had to consciously say, okay, in this book this is going to be Gabe and Sam's story. In this book it's going to be Benny's. The first couple of books, actually, if you look at them, the first couple of books are Benny's story.
Right.
Irish Chain and Fool's Puzzle, very definitely. I did that because I was still learning how to write, and I was writing from her point of view, first person, so that was the easiest thing to do.
Well, and also readers needed to get to know Benny.
Connect with her as a character. And see, I kind of set myself up from the beginning. Again, I didn't know I was writing a series. I write from first person Benny's point of view, so everything has to be filtered through her, which can get to be very difficult sometimes. Kansas Troubles and Goose in the Pond really were more about Gabe and his problems. He suffers a loss in Goose in the Pond of someone very close to him. And Kansas Troubles is all about his family back in Kansas. So then I move on to Dove in the Window, which has a little bit of both of them. Mariner's Compass, again, is Benny. Then Gabe comes into Seven Sisters. So, and then I brought her cousin Emery in, who starts becoming more and more of a main character. Emery has his own fan club. He just, you know, there are women that just like, forget Gabe, I want Emery. So in the book I just finished, Arkansas Traveler, him and Elvie are very main characters in that.